Hey all, Rick Rex here, back with another one for you. And this time we're going to visit on everyone's favorite topic, the clamp. Is it good or bad, or is it what the game needs? Well, let's talk about it together. But first, if you like what you see and you want more, hit that like and subscribe button to help keep the channel growing and also to not miss one single update as they drop. So the Omnibus, what is it? Why is it necessary from the dev's perspective? Well, the Omnibus was really designed so that old content gets queued. That's, in simple terms, pretty much the nuts and bolts of it. Now, it was designed in whole by the devs to allow new players to easily run through the almost 12 years of content without waiting too much in queues to progress through the game. For a new player, that's great for leveling. I remember so many years ago trying to get into stale content and waiting forever. It was an absolute nightmare trying to run up a tune because it took so long for a queue to pop without a league or a big group behind me to help out. But for veterans, the goal of the devs is really to keep us in game longer, i.e. to give us something to do. Well, where they failed here is the natural evolution of a veteran player is that we grind content for a really long time to get our gear and to get those feats. But like bread, it gets stale. But we always have a shiny carrot at the end of that grind, and that's the next content. I can't tell you how many times I've said at the end of an episode, that's it, I'm done, and I am never going back in there again. But the Omnibus at some point will always bring us back. Now, the experience was a big deal for the devs. Power creep took hold time and time again, and multiple rebalancing attempts and even a clamp attempt in the past has failed and caused calamity in the game. In the end, the content was not being experienced the way it was intended when it was developed due to this. Then there's consistency. A run should always have a challenge, and it should be engaging, but you really shouldn't be able to fall asleep and wake up 10 minutes later still alive with a boss beating on you the whole time, and you certainly shouldn't be able to tap them with your pinky toe once and they fall over quivering, right? Well, they thought by and large that they could fix it with a clamp. So what made this a thing? How did we even get here? Well, it was really designed with new player retention in mind. And the original pitch was pretty simple. New players have to have queues pop, so this makes that happen. And when you go in, by the way, you can't raffle stomp content into the ground, so that way they can enjoy it. And that means that the clamp came along with it. Now, you want new playmates? This is the price that you pay, and this is what you have to do to keep our game alive. That was the pitch. Well, it was met in the beginning with two camps, those for and those against. And the problem was in the way that they handled it. The vocal minority was heard much more clearly than a dedicated group of veterans who, by and large, ended up keeping quiet about the whole thing as it had been attempted before and was undone, so not really much to worry about, right? Well, tragically, this was a misstep by the player base, and over a year later it's still being talked about on the forums. As a matter of fact, at least 1 out of every 20 posts is in some way related to the removal of the clamp. So why is it talked about so much, and why is this such a hot topic? Well, let's look at it if it's good for the majority of players from their perspective. Now, for your new players, it was a glowing success. The older part of the game had a new life, and it was full of players similar to the old days when content was fresh. And this is really great to get into things and be running, but the gearing system means that you don't have to run everything. So, feats? Well, what are those? And the content was just soft enough that a few new players could sit in the back and hit triangle every 3 seconds and still finish content and pound their chests. Now, for your casual players, Omnibus was quick to make the grind a chore. Omnibus is purely for source marks and feats, but the runs can be lengthy due to player base inflicted problems with no way to power through some of the content without proper rolls and OP burn to counteract it. And in turn, that made this a huge turnoff for the casual player base altogether, which made advancing your tune significantly harder than it was. And then there's the veteran players who really paid the biggest price. Omnibus is an absolute nightmare for this part of the player base, and there's really nothing more frustrating than a player who took the time to get as good as they possibly could at the game, only to be stuck in a failed run because who they're playing with fails to do the mechanics for whatever reason and the run fails. To this group, Omnibus is a waste of time. So the new player that could learn something from the old player doesn't happen because the veteran is officially the old man on the porch screaming, "Get off of my lawn," while shaking a stick. It's a tough thing, and frankly, for those who value feats and min-maxing their tunes, it was and continues to be a pebble in their shoe. So other than the obvious, what changed for the veteran group? Well, in short, everything. Most of it impacted time, and I don't want to tell you exactly how many tunes I have that are max CR or in current content with almost 700 skill points for fear of judgment, but let's just say that it's more than I should have, and honestly more than I can manage. Now, when a player has played the game for as many years as I have, you really have to find a way to keep it fresh. So for me in particular, and I'm guessing most of us that are watching this will agree, that's alts. Using a different power in a different role freshens it up and changes the style of play pretty dramatically and allows the grind to be fresher for longer. So let's take a look at what it actually takes to run a tune in only current content right quick. So here's what I figured. If we spend about 15 minutes running dailies, 10 minutes running a solo or a duo, and about 15 minutes on an alert every day, and then once a week we do a raid about 20 minutes and 3 bounties about 20 minutes or so, and then we throw in about a half an hour or so to work on feats or other miscellaneous things like seasonals every day, that means we'd actually be putting in about 9 hours per week per tune. And if you have 5, then congratulations, you found yourself a non-paying full-time job. So here's the frustration for most of us. It's a juggle, because that's just current content and we aren't even talking about failed omnibus runs for source marks. Well, we in this group just don't have the time to waste on it. So what does an omnibus run look like for a veteran player? Well, if we're lucky, we get a decent group, but 90% of the time, if you don't bring your rolls, you're really in for trouble. So there's so many things that could go wrong in a run if players aren't experienced and don't know why they need rolls or just simply don't want to. Remember y'all, it's DPS universe. So the worst part is, in some content, it literally only takes one person who doesn't block at the right time to cause a wipe, and there's nothing worse than that because you can't control it. So then the endless loop of finding more players starts, and that's really not a good look for someone who's on a time clamp because of the clamp. And then there's the feats. Way back when, if we struggled to get a feat in particular content, we'd wait a while. Time would pass and the CR differential would take its toll and feats were more manageable and easy to get. And there's really no excuse back then for not having a healthy skill point pool, but now if you didn't get some of those feats before the content got its clamp, well, you're done. You'd spend hours trying to get a particular feat that in the past would have been a layup and only taken a couple of minutes. And this is really what most of the veterans are mostly frustrated and concerned with. It's the time sink. How much of it do you want? Remember, our gaming time is finite, so most of us, well, we have to go to work or to school, and remember, we also have to sleep, and let's not forget about our families. Those are most important to us. So in the end, is it helping? Well, no one really knows if it's achieving the desired results, but the recent ban over silly marketplace errors and a completely broken and ignored PvP system leaves little air to have things in place that push the existing player base away. After a year of living with the clamp, it's kind of like learning to live with a boss that you don't like and treats you bad, but the job pays good. You don't like it, but you put up with it, at least until you don't anymore. So what can we do to make it more palatable? I said this the day that they brought out the clamp, and I'll continue to make my opinion known on it. Make the clamp optional. It solves everything. And you can easily make the clamp stay in place as it is in the Omnibus, but allow those that wish to go back to get feats missed to pre-form a group and go in unclamped with no reward other than feats, which is really what we go back for after all, right? But on a serious note, everyone wins this way. Not one person can exploit it because there are not any rewards given, and this way it'll help newer players catch up on those feats that they missed the last 12 years and see the game from the perspective of not struggling for power and actually being competitive. And I mean, after all, after the money spent on allies and artifacts, the only difference is stats, practice, and skill. That's it. But that's just my 2 cents, y'all. Thanks for joining, and once again, if you like what you see and you want more, hit that like and subscribe button to help keep the channel growing and also to not miss one single update as they drop. I'll see y'all next time.